In the second example, we look at what happens when we sell more than one product. Of course, it's very rare that companies sell only one product. In order to use CVP analysis, we have to create a weighted average contribution margin for products in order to calculate break-even units. So we see that we have units A and B, products A and B, and we have a sales mix that consists of 80% of A to 20% of B. In cost volume profit analysis, we assume that sales mix is constant. What we need to do in order to create a weighted average contribution margin is to take the contribution margin of each product times its percentage in the sales mix. So to determine what our contribution margin is, in one, we need our weighted average contribution margin per unit. So we're going to take the contribution margin of product A times the percent of the sales mix of product A plus the contribution margin of product B times the percent of the sales mix of product B. That gives us a weighted average contribution margin of $20. We call that a sales bundle or sales mix. Next, we want to determine the break-even point in total units and the number of units of A and B that must be sold. So the break-even formula is fixed costs divided by our contribution margin. So to determine the break-even, we would take fixed costs of 400,000 divided by our weighted average contribution margin. We need 20,000 units to break even. We can then determine how many of product A that is and how many of product B. So we know that we have 80% of product A and 20% of product B in our sales mix bundle. So in order to break even, we must sell 16,000 of product A and 4,000 of product B, for a total of 20,000 units of our current sales mix. We can use GoalSeek to do that also. We have 400,000 in mixed costs. We need to determine our sales volume in units to break even. We know that we have a $20 weighted average contribution margin per unit. Our contribution margin generated is the number of units times the contribution margin. Our fixed costs are 400,000, and our operating profit is contribution margin minus fixed costs. So using the GoalSeek function to do break-even analysis, we want the operating profit cell to equal 0 by changing the number of sales units. And that gives us 20,000 units, which is exactly the same information we received from the 20,000 here. We can use that GoalSeek to do all kinds of information. We could say, what if instead of just breaking even, I wanted my operating profit to be $250,000 by changing the sales volume. Now my sales volume is 32,500 units, of which 80% would be A and 20% would be B. Question 3 says, determine the break-even point in total units and the break-even point in sales of each of the two products using the sales basket approach. Assume that each basket consists of 4 units of A and 1 unit of B. So for our sales basket of 4 units of A and 1 unit of B, we have a contribution margin of 4 times the contribution margin of A of 15. And for B, it's 1 unit times the contribution margin of 40 for B. So our total sales basket bundle has a contribution margin of $100. So what we want to do then is determine how many baskets we need to sell to break even. Or what are our fixed costs? 400,000 divided by $100 contribution margin. We need to sell 4,000 baskets. Each basket has 5 products, 5 units. So 40,000 or 4,000 times 5 is a total of 20,000 units, which we had calculated before. Our next question says, determine the overall point in terms of sales dollars using a weighted average contribution margin ratio. So contribution margin ratio is sales dollars minus contribution margin. So in order to determine this, we have to look at what our current sales are predicted to be and our current selling price to get the weighted point of each sale. So we have product A and product B. We're going to add them together to get our total projected sales. Product A, we project that we're going to sell 18,000 times the sales price of $80 per unit. And for product B, we predict that we're going to sell 4,500 at a sales price of $140 per unit. Our total sales then are $2,770,000. So now we need to determine what percent each of these is of the sales mix. So we take product A sales divided by total sales. And for product B, we take product B sales divided by total sales. So now we have our percentage of sales amount. We take this times the contribution margin ratio. So first we have to determine the contribution margin ratio of product A and product B. Contribution margin ratio is our contribution margin divided by our sales price. Okay. And now to get our weighted average contribution margin ratio, we take the sales percentage weight times our contribution margin ratio for each product. And add them together. So we have a contribution margin ratio of 21.73913%. To find out the break even in sales dollars, we take the fixed cost of 400,000 divided by the weighted average contribution margin ratio. We need $1,840,000 in sales in order to break even. We would then determine what we need in sales of product A and product B based on their weighted amounts, where we would take the break even in sales times their percentage of sales amount, telling us that we need a total of 1,280,000 of A and 560,000 of B to break